worked for this guy. He was a contractor, and he used to just make the tools and implements he needed. He would, gas cut steel, weld it together, make himself a pile driver to go on his rammer, or a scraper blade. They're quite serious tools. I immediately saw the potential of fabricating with steel. It was cheap, it was readily available, it was everywhere, and all you needed was a bit of gear. He worked completely instinctively. He had no training, but he managed to make everything work. Even these things that did quite complex tasks, they were always undesigned. There was no paperwork at all. They pretty much sprang into being, from here to there. I really reject a sort of a very logical or linear type of art that takes an idea and then attempts to illustrate it. For me, when I've done that, they've always seemed very two-dimensional. I get a strange satisfaction out of solving a lot of the problems along the way of making the object. I'm not happy to just hand the job over to someone, for example, and say, I want this and I don't really know or care how you do it, I just want this. I'm a control freak. I have to know how it's done, and I like to even have a part in it. John and Joe asked me to submit an idea for their sculpture park, I think 4 years ago. I had lots of ideas, and I actually suggested them to them. I went so far as to costing and doing models, which I later decided not to do, and had to ring them up and say, I've changed my mind, and I've done that a lot of times. It was became a bit of a running joke. They specifically wanted to work in corten steel. They were adamant about that. I didn't want to just sort of hunt around and find an idea, and I felt it needed to be right. My first idea, I probably would have gone with, that was a giant corten steel balloon. But I experimented with the corten and it simply wouldn't do what I was trying to get it to do. I was using this technique actually that I've used to make these, which is hydroinflation, to stretch the steel into a given shape, and it requires you to cut quite accurate patterns, carefully weld them, and then with huge pressure blow them out. I'd done one that was like a large sort of rectangular standing obelisk with a giant stainless steel aperture in the middle. That was the balloon idea, got me thinking about empty space, because I had this weird, almost a feeling of guilt of locking up this. The balloon was this object which locked away this space, and I thought, there's a space that no one can then use, and it's been, I've kind of put this fence around the outside of it. It felt like I was pushing the material. I was working despite the material rather than with it, if you like. When I first heard about the Kaimanawa wall, which was, I suppose, the germ of the idea, it always intrigued me, and I saw these images of this interesting looking wall which faced east-west. It's a natural rock formation in the Kaimanawas. The wall itself isn't so interesting. It was the emotions that it aroused in people. There was a belief that it might be the remains of an ancient temple, possibly Egyptian or Inca, or anything. Then I sort of tied that in with the large utilitarian concrete block walls that I'd seen out sort of in sort of builders' supply yards where they store aggregates and rock and gravel, that kind of thing. And they make these bays out of huge concrete blocks. And the structures that they build are incredibly raw and visceral and just rudely built and constructed, but they're sort of just fantastic, sort of spontaneous groundworks. They're done without permits or anything like that, and they were just made by placing these blocks, big battered blocks with the corners all knocked off them. So I actually had a real rush of blood for it. I thought, oh, this is exciting. The best laid plans go west. At best, they exceed all expectation, but expectation sees them coming and has already got new plans. But the accident took us all by surprise. The ground opened up, a perfect void. So that's my poem. I'm about to approach the girls yet again with a change in plan. So there's to be some extra detail in each block and then a negative space in between a section of this block wall. Now, instead of writing out the poem with part of the work, I'm letting the work say it for itself. I have to say, the gals have been incredibly accommodating.
The vacuum.
In the ground?
Yes, and around in the surrounding. Like we discussed, but I had it as a separate thing. What I've done is now brought these together. When you've been in this process for as long as this one has, you begin to lose sight of where it begins or where it ends. Like you can feel precious about things, but I've changed it once, changed it twice, changed it 3 times. So to put up with all that, I mean, they really have indulged me. We got to a point where it was like, no, that's enough. It's a negotiation, but that's not to say that it's carpet haggling. Well, we both wanted the best work for the site. At this stage, I made a landscape model and set a maquette into it to orient the piece in the land and refine the proportions. And I decided to write the entire verse in steel and put it on a separate and individual block. I think it will fit into the landscape. It's going to look awkward at first until it all weathers in, but it's in a few months when the grass is all grown back and it's starting to settle in and the rust is evened out. I think it'll work. It's definitely a partnership. You see, they provide everything. They provide the space, the material, the contract, the wherewithal to actually put the job together. The idea that the artwork is some uncompromised artistic vision is some kind of fantasy, I'm sure. I wouldn't know of any artwork, or particularly one of a scale, of that isn't compromised by something or other. It's exactly like it was planned. It's quite remarkable. It's I don't know. It shouldn't be surprising, but it's still to this day. I think, oh my God, it's turned out like we planned. Yeah, and has done exactly that. One thing I've learned about this thing is, in a way, you have to just decide you're going to do the thing, and then just do it, and just eschew all doubt, because otherwise you let too much else in. The tension is a stimulant, and the fear of failure, and the all the demands and the anxiety about things going right, the fear of creating some ghastly white elephant or just having a bad accident, and that they're incredibly stimulating. Yeah, no, I don't feel like I'm at all objective. I think you need. I feel objective about my own work after a number of years. I don't think you can really achieve personal objectivity about your own work.